Welcome to another edition of the Business and Personal Podcast, where we bring you closer to those people that you do business with. And we're excited to have Shari Ross on with us today. She is a senior living coach and an author as well. And anybody that follows my podcast knows this is a favorite topic of mine. Several senior living episodes in our past that you can go and find. So I thought Shari would be a perfect guest to bring on and kind of bring a lot of that stuff full circle. So I know you are very busy, Shari, so appreciate you taking the time to join me today.
Absolutely, Ryan. I'm so glad to be here, and it's wonderful what you're doing, and so happy to spread my knowledge with your audience.
So it's the business and personal. Let's learn a little bit about Shari and what led you to where you're at now.
Absolutely. So my current trajectory it was a very curvy path. I started out in entertainment industry as an actress growing up and ended up at NYU. Tisch School of the Arts and kind of focused my life around acting and all sorts of entertainment industry related things and I kind of moved to LA, did the whole thing, and then eventually settled down, had a couple of children, and became a stay-at-home mom. And once they got a little older, I decided to go into the medical field just to use my brain a little bit more. And so I became a pharmaceutical rep, and I ended up selling a medication called Namenda, which is for Alzheimer's disease. And when I started to talk to a lot of the memory care, industry professionals, nurses, and doctors, it just opened my eyes to a whole nother world. And I ended up going to work at a memory care community after that in sales. And that was just completely eye-opening because, then I started working with families. So instead of just on the doctor end, now I'm working with families, talking to them over the table about all of the craziness that went along with having a loved one with dementia. So from there, after a couple of years, I got into more of the senior living, independent living, assisted living, memory care kind of community sales and became a sales specialist all over the country, working with communities and especially working again with hundreds of families, walking them through the process of the craziness of the maze of senior living because there's so many different components and it's a very scary situation, especially if you haven't dealt with any of it before, which most of us haven't. If you're looking at senior living, generally you have not done it before. So here we are. I'm, kind of hearing and seeing the same things, this panic in people's eyes and exhaustion and anxiety and worry and guilt. And I decided to write a book because I wanted to be able to answer all of these same kind of questions that I was hearing and kind of spread the word that way. So I wrote Senior Living Made Simple, and I created the Simple method. Simple is an acronym. It's helping people either before they're starting the whole search or during it to kind of calm them down and give them a little more clarity, a little less chaos and panic. And so I'm also part of the sandwich generation. I've got, two young adult children now, and I've got my own parents who are kind of, aging gracefully. With little snags along the way. So I completely understand that whole situation that a lot of our population is currently in right now with all the baby boomers aging, and all of us, adults kind of trying to figure it all out. We have a lot on our plate.
That's quite the amazing career path there. It's pretty awesome that if you just put yourself out there and look for opportunities, the doors that can open and the different things that can lead to, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's such an interesting field and it's such a necessary kind of thing to be able to help people kind of find their way through this stage of their life. But my main, the main idea around it for me is that I feel like seniors are in their fourth quarter of life. They just because they're older, just because they maybe have to now live in a senior living community, it is it is not meaning that they're going to end their life at that point or just sit there waiting to die. We want to promote the idea that you can really have a very, very good quality of life, even once you move out of your home and now you're in a community potentially surrounded by like-minded people and friends, and maybe picking up some new skills, new hobbies, learning new things, staying active physically. It's a good thing. And it used to be a very scary, scary thing, to think of going to a facility, or a nursing home. And that's really not what it is anymore. It's a community. It's an apartment. And there's so many great options out there now for that fourth quarter of life.
And I'm glad you bring up Alzheimer's and dementia first, because we hear so much about those. There is a lot more awareness now, a lot more treatment available. So I feel like things are heading in the right direction with that. But just so people understand, we hear these terms all the time. What is the difference? What are the differences, I guess, between Alzheimer's and dementia?
Yeah, no, and that's a very common question. So dementia is sort of the umbrella term, right? There's hundreds of different types of dementia, whether it's Parkinson's or you've got your frontal lobe dementia, you've got your vascular dementia. Alzheimer's is really the most common dementia. If you see somebody with dementia, typically that's, the type of dementia they have. So all the different dementias, it's just affecting different parts of the brain, or it's caused by a different, thing that has happened in your health. So yeah, and what we're seeing a lot nowadays, unfortunately, or it's because we're all living longer. So we're seeing quite an uptick in different dementias. But what we see oftentimes now is something called MCI, which is mild cognitive impairment. It's sort of the precursor to full-blown dementia. But it is a very, very important time to actually do something. And not just like let it go by the wayside and be like, well, getting old, forgetting things, whatever. No, we want to treat MCI, that stage, as a precursor to full blown. So we want to make sure that we're getting the right treatment and are in the right place and around the right people, and are getting a lot of stimulation socially, physically, and cognitively. We want to keep creating these synapses in our brain, and that happens when we, utilize all three of those areas. Thankfully, there's a lot of communities now, senior living communities, that have specialized programs in place for MCI, because used to be, if you got any sort of memory loss, you go right into this secured memory care. That is not a good thing, because you can actually get worse quicker, or being around people that are way worse off than you in their dementia journey. So if you're in the right place, using, the right tools, then it can slow down the decline of dementia. And that's the goal, to be able to have that quality of life and enjoy yourself for as long as possible.
Yeah, because like you said, people are living longer than ever, so we want the quality of those years to be as good as possible.
Yeah.
And we're learning just exercising that brain is every bit as important as exercising the heart or other parts of your body. You got to keep it engaged.
Absolutely. And that social component, it's actually, they're finding the most important part of aging well. We saw during COVID how a lot of seniors, they were just in their homes, really isolated. Well, we all kind of were, but seniors especially became very isolated, not moving, not socializing. And after COVID kind of ended, we just saw such an influx in these declined seniors. And so once they started to interact with people again and socialize and all that, it became apparent that that was really what they needed, and what we all really truly need. I mean, that connection.
And the other aspect too of so many people living longer is now it creates these challenges and questions for the family members of, all right, does my loved one need home care? When does my loved one need to go to assisted living? Are there certain triggers that you look for or advice that you give people that if this, or this is happening, this is where you need home care or this is where you need assisted living?
Yeah, I mean, I think that everybody honestly would love to be able to just stay home and live in their home forever. I mean, I completely understand that. But when you start seeing signs like there's red flags, right? When you come go visit mom or dad and now they're, you look in their fridge and there's like a ketchup bottle and an old like moldy pot roast, like there's no food in there. Or you will go in their house and it's got like kind of some interesting odors. It's not clean. There's tripping hazards. Maybe they need a bathroom, bar, or shower bar. Maybe you're like, you go through their mail and you're like, oh, there's all these overdue bills. Or you're getting a call from their doctor saying, hey, your mom's missed the last 3 appointments. There's definitely a lot of red flags about whether you're needing assisted living. Or maybe your parent has really isolated themselves and they're just like not going out. Maybe they're not driving anymore. So they really just they just sit there in their dark house watching TV all day. And quite honestly, that's not a good quality of life in my eyes anyway. Or maybe they're missing medications, they're not taking them properly, which can be really dangerous. Or maybe they're falling a lot and you're noticing bruises on them. And that all goes hand in hand with, like, say, having a messy house where there's tripping hazards, along the way. So there's different things you can do in a house to make it safer, right? To put in the bars in the bathroom, to make sure that everything's ADA compliant, to, make sure you have somebody coming in, a caregiver perhaps to watch over your parent, or a housekeeper. But sometimes it's just not practical because it takes a lot of scheduling, a lot of preparation, a lot of work on the side of the adult child. So in that case, another option, obviously, is to go to some sort of an assisted living, whether that, depending on the timing, independent living, where you're getting your meals, you're getting your housekeeping, and you get to socialize, right? But there's no care because maybe you don't need help with a shower or, getting dressed. But the next stage then would be assisted living, where you can get that kind of help. And there's typically nurses on site 24/7 so that you have that peace of mind. And then there's memory care. And oftentimes memory care is inside the assisted living. There are different options even beyond that. Boarding cares, which is like a 6-bed. You've got your CCRCs, which is like a huge campus with all of the different, types of senior living there. So you have your options, and I gave you some red flags to look for. Getting your parent to an assisted living, that's a whole other can of worms. I always say you want to start early. Just kind of open the can a little bit, piece by piece, by presenting just ideas about, hey, ask them. Don't tell them to be like, yeah, you need to go here. It's time for you to move. No, you just ask them, how do you think it would, make you feel to have all these meals cooked for you? Or how would you feel about, just being in a safer environment? Or what do you think about, a place where you can, get free rides anywhere you want to go and hang out with people, and, just ask some questions, get them to get the idea in their head so that's not this big shock all at once later on.
And another aspect of home care I don't think a lot of people think about is just companion care. A lot of the home care companies I talk to say this is a big need that they're seeing right now, that maybe a spouse passes away and the other spouse is perfectly capable of living by themselves at home, but just to have someone to talk to.
Oh
And we
yeah.
talk about engaging the brain, being social. How important do you think that part of it is as well?
It's huge. So whether you have a companion come into the home, or you find maybe like a day group that's in your area, kind of like a senior living club sort of thing, where you're just getting out a few days a week to, play cards or play bingo or, have discussion groups, any of those things, just to kind of keep your mind stimulated. But if you're just sitting by yourself, it's just not a great way to continue living, especially after you've lost a spouse. It's so difficult to just be by yourself at that age. So have support around you, whether that means someone coming in or you going out. Just make sure, you're not just kind of walling away at home by yourself. Not a fun way to go.
That's not good for anybody. So
No.
I can think of numerous reasons why people would call you or need your services as a senior living coach, more than we even have time for in this
Hmm.
podcast. But just in general, would you say that there's a main topic that people have concerns of, or a reason that they end up reaching out to you in current?
Yeah, absolutely. So they people reach out to me in different stages. Some people, they're just kind of curious, like how will I know when it's time for my loved one, whether it's a spouse or especially a spouse with some dementia? How do I know when it's time for them to go to senior living or to memory care? And then how do I talk to them about it? What do I say? How do I convince them? That seems to be a very, very difficult topic. And then it's, well, what do I look for? What do they need? What type of senior living community should I be looking for? And oftentimes they'll say facility or nursing home. And I always try to correct them and say, use the proper terminology with your loved one because it's less scary. Um, so I give them little hints and tips and tricks. Let's take them to have lunch at this community. Just no pressure, no tour. Just go have lunch. Show them that it's not some dark, hallway where people are just sitting there in wheelchairs, drooling, waiting to die. It's not like that anymore, right? It's a lot more lively and it's lovely oftentimes. So to get them to just kind of slowly explore what's out there, right? The other thing that I hear a lot of questions about, of course, is financial. How do I pay for this? Because it's expensive. Whether you're staying at home and you have to redo your house and hire caregivers, or whether you're going to a community, there's financials involved. I also try to coach people on what they need in order to prepare. There's a lot of documents, whether it's power of attorney documents, end of life wishes, all of their advance directives. Maybe they have a long-term care policy somewhere hidden in a box in the basement. Gotta get that out and make sure that you know where those things are. Maybe put everything into a binder. It just helps so much the adult child who's helping you to get you where you need to go, because there is a lot of paperwork oftentimes with these types of communities and even with home care.
Getting old doesn't need to be dreadful. You might need a
No.
coach just to kind of walk you through all those challenges. So I'm going to put you on the spot here, Shari. I always like to close with a success story, happy story kind of thing. Just from your years of doing this and people you work with, is there a success story that kind of stands out that always makes you smile when you think back upon it, of someone that you were able to help?
Oh my God, there's so many. I can't tell. I mean, to choose one. I will choose one, but I will say so many families come to me and they end up in senior living of some sort. And I cannot tell you how many times I hear, I wish I did this 5 years ago. Because ultimately, when I see a family come in to a community, I mean, just like exhausted and just, so worried and all that. A month later, after their loved one is there, like both the loved one and the adult child are like different people. And you could see it in their faces. They just seem livelier. They seem like happier. It's amazing. But one real good story is just on a personal note is my father-in-law, who was like the typical senior. He was in his own apartment in Florida. I'm in California. So every time I would go see him, I'd be like noticing this kind of decline. And he was very isolated. He wasn't eating microwave meals every day. He was no longer driving. So he was really just stuck in the home unless he took an Uber. He really just seemed down. He was not socializing. He just wasn't in great shape. Physically, he wasn't moving. So I did bring up the idea of assisted living multiple times. He was very adamantly against it, which is typical. But I kept planting the seed. And unfortunately, what ended up happening was a crisis. He ended up falling. He was on the floor for hours before he was found by his brother, who lives in Florida. He had a broken femur and he went to the hospital and then rehab. From there, he was like, okay, I acknowledge I'm probably not safe at home anymore. Let's go. And he had to, he decided he would go to an assisted living community. Well, skip to a couple months later, I mean, 10 years younger, he looked. He looked like, way healthier. He was happy. Now he's going and playing cards with some new friends. He's taking the shuttle bus to Target. He's eating 3 good, nutritious meals a day. He's, he's going to a chair yoga class. So he was, steadier. He was getting in-house rehab or physical therapy. So getting stronger physically. I mean, every area of his life improved. And now it's like a couple years later, and I'm so thrilled with how that all went down, even though it took a crisis, which often times is the case, unfortunately. It turned out okay, and he is just thriving. And that's what I see a lot of times happening with other seniors, and it's just really eye-opening for the families to see how much being in the right environment as we age can really, really help us.
That's just a fabulous story, and it's what it's all about, right? Like you probably go through your
Yeah.
rough days just like anybody else and question what you're doing, and then situations like that come up, and it just fires you up to keep moving forward, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I do advocate for senior living communities a lot. It's not right for everybody, but it's definitely a great option for a lot of people.
Well, hopefully, even if it's just one family that comes across this podcast and you're able to help out, it was well worth our time.
I'd
And
love it.
hopefully, it's even more than that. But what is the best
Absolutely.
way for people to reach out to you, Shari, to get started? I know you work with people all across the country. That's the beauty of technology nowadays.
Absolutely. Yes. You can go to my website. It's seniorlivingmadesimple.com. And you can sign up for a 30-minute or a 60-minute session with me over Zoom or over the phone. And you can also pick up my book, Senior Living Made Simple, and its companion workbook by the same title, which has a whole bunch of checklists and journal prompts to go along with the book. And you can get those on Amazon.com. You can get the book on BarnesandNobles.com, Walmart.com, Goodreads, anywhere they sell books online. And then on Etsy, I have a senior living shop where you can download the workbook pages individually as well.
Awesome.
So yeah.
Just a fabulous service, Shari. There's roadmaps for life for so many stages of life, but I feel like as seniors get into retirement, there aren't a lot of great roadmaps for them, and they need help from people like you. So keep up the great work, and maybe we'll have you on again down the road for an update.
I would love it. Thank you so much for having me on, Ryan. Talk to you soon.